Welcome to Kindness in Business, the podcast where we explore the power of compassion and empathy in the business world. My name is Sonia Gonzalez Guillonneau, and I'll be your host. Today, we are joined with a very special guest. We've got Mattia Schaper here. Mattia is the founder of SDRs of Germany, the largest B2B sales community in the DACH region. What began as a side project has grown into a thriving movement that brings together the most inspiring minds in sales within DACH. She's based in Berlin. She was a former SDR who still lives and breathes sales. She loves her road back and shares her professional journey openly on LinkedIn, spreading sales love. Welcome, Mattia. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Sonia. It's a pleasure to be invited. I think it's always so nice when someone reads a nice intro about you and you're like, oh, that's me. She's talking about me. So well done. Thank you very much for that. That's made me very welcome in the first couple of seconds on your podcast.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to hear that. And honestly, bio has been taken from your own achievements within LinkedIn, right? And from your own journey, which I think we can all see publicly. But I think what's more interesting is asking you, who are you beyond work? Where did your journey start?
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, obviously it's taken from LinkedIn and it's taken from achievements, but it also only shows the highlight reel, right? Like all social media, if you look onto an Instagram profile, it always shows the nice moments of your life and the nice moments of your career, right? The struggle and the challenges and all the mistakes you've made along the way to get there, they are not really shown within that, right? So just hearing the highlights summarized is definitely a nice thing. But yeah, who am I outside of work? I think I have to say it's a question that I've been struggling with probably my entire career with, because I think like many within our age that are very ambitious and entrepreneurs, it's very hard nowadays to separate work and you as a private person, right? Especially when you're an entrepreneur. So it's quite funny because every time I have a challenging time at work, I also have a challenging time usually in my private life, if that makes sense, and vice versa, right? So actually the other day, someone that's close to me asked me, yeah, but Mattia, who are you when you strip away everything that you do at work? And I sat there and I was like, damn, I don't know. I think I wouldn't really be me anymore, right? Because it's so ingrained within what I do. But yeah, I think in business and in private alike, I am someone that is very passionate for the things that they do. I think it's very much the case that I either am very passionate or I don't want to do it at all, right? Like that's been one of my biggest struggles, that every time that, I have things that I don't really want to do or that don't really lie within my passion, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that. As a good friend of mine once used to say to me, it's your biggest blessing and your biggest curse sometimes. But yeah, I think that's what drives me usually, and that's what I do in both in private and in work. I usually follow my passion because I know that's where I'm good at, and that's how I built SDRs of Germany, right? Like I got into sales. I started as an SDR, and I was super passionate about it, and my entire life all of a sudden evolved around being an SDR and sales and things like that. And out of that, SDRs of Germany came out. So I think it's actually quite fitting for the topic of this podcast, right? Compassion and kindness usually go hand in hand with passion, because if you're not passionate about a topic, you're usually also not compassionate with other people around it, right? Yeah.
I think your journey has been so inspiring, right? And obviously looking as an outsider, it really shows that self-love that I mentioned within your bio. I remember you as an SDR when you were at Sales Loft. I remember your content. You even gave some talks at SaaS Leads when I was there. And,
True.
Even then, I think what set you apart, what made you different was your vulnerability. was the fact that you showed the good and the bad. It wasn't just a path of roses. And anyone who's been in sales can relate to that. Like, yes, there are some very good moments and those highs are high, but there are also lows. There are also troubles. There are also challenges that come with it, right? And kindness actually plays a very big role in sales, whether we realize it or not, or whether we give it importance or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, I think we're lucky that we live in this time right now. And I'm not saying that kindness and compassion and empathy is where it needs to be, but I think it's much further than it used to be in the past, I think we often talk about where we aren't yet, when I think it's also sometimes important to acknowledge, like, hey, we've also come a long way, right? Like sometimes I'm like, I know also women empowerment and all of these things are not where they are yet, and we need to talk about how we get there, right? And how we make all of these things better. But let's take a moment to also appreciate how far we've come. And I think when I started posting on LinkedIn and when I was an SDR, I mean, to be honest, one of the reasons why, I continued to be vulnerable was because people liked that also, right? Because I tried it out once and, people were a fan of it. If I would have done this 20, 30 years ago, people would have maybe slashed me and then I would have stopped doing it, right? So I think the time was good. We were just starting to be a bit more human at work and to be okay with being vulnerable. We're not where we need to be just yet, right? But it was a good time, and that obviously also encouraged me to continue on that path.
It's really nice to hear that. And I think you're totally right when you're saying that times have changed. And I've been in the industry for the last 10 years. And even within these 10 years, I've seen huge changes. And you're totally right that maybe 10 years ago, it would have been a lot more stigmatized. It would have been more seen as a weakness, as opposed to something that's relatable and that people can learn from and be inspired from, right? And I do think that especially when we're younger and coming into these new industries, we don't feel like we've got a voice yet. We don't feel like what we say matters, right? But actually, SDRs, AEs of today are the leaders of tomorrow. We see it with you, right? You're now a leader in your space. You're helping other salespeople succeed, but also build community, feel like they belong somewhere. And, that is beautiful. And that's something that potentially 20 years ago wouldn't have thrived, right? So I guess, what does kindness in business mean to you personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing to your last point, right? Like, I do actually think that a couple of, or that we are blessed, a little bit more blessed in this generation, right? Because I remember one of the very first posts that I've made was a post about how I fucked up a discovery call, right? It was one of my first discovery calls at Sales Loft. And it was a really big, cool German company. And I really just messed it up. Like, I was so embarrassed. Like, do you know those calls when you're like happy that you push the red button and meeting, because you're just like, you've been waiting for this meeting to end, because I knew it was just so bad. And I made a post about it because afterwards I sent them an email and I said, hey guys, today really wasn't my day. I'm really sorry. Like, I know you're probably like, okay, we're never going to buy this product, right? Because I really didn't do a good job. And then I said, please give me another chance, because I wasn't in my best state today. And then that was the post, basically, right? And I told this story, and I think they agreed, even though I think they never bought actually, but they agreed to have another meeting and not stop the process there. And I posted it. And I remember I was in Berlin at the time, and my parents did like a barbecue or something at their space, at their house. There was this guy, my dad's friend, who is also on LinkedIn. I think at the time he was probably like 55, I'm guessing, like my parents' age. And he came to me and he was like, Mattia, you need to stop like posting these things. They're just gonna make you, people are gonna think that you're not good at sales calls, and like you should, that's way too vulnerable. You shouldn't do that. And I was like, and I looked at him and I was like, but that's exactly why I'm doing it, right? Because I think I think we all go through something like this, right? And if I just pretend like all my sales calls are perfect, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to, hate themselves for the fact that a couple of their right. And I remember sitting there and being like, yeah, I think in your generation that would have, people would think, oh, she's talking about a mistake she's made, so she's not capable or she's not professional, right? But within my generation, I think that post got 2,000 likes or something and millions of impressions, right? So in my generation, a lot of people were like, oh, thanks for saying that, right? That gives me hope for my calls. And to me, that was one of those things where I was like, I'm glad I'm in this generation and I wasn't born 30 years before that. And I wanted to tell that story because I think that, that says a lot about the situation, right? And now I forgot what you asked in the first place.
No,
what is kindness? You said, right? So I think kindness is always decided there's two categories of being kind, right? There's being kind to yourself, and then there's being kind to others in work and in life always. And I think both of them are also kind of interconnected. Like I notice every time that I have a little bit of a rough patch, like last year was not a good year for me, right? I had a lot of struggles privately with my business partner, who was also my friend, and it was a difficult year, right? And because it was difficult, I fell into the trap of not being kind to myself and just being very you're not worth it and what you're doing, and nothing is working out, and I was just not kind to myself. And at the same time, then I always notice that I'm also not kind to other people around me. I know, I'm being frustrated with myself. I am not kind to myself. And then almost always, I also put it on other people around me, right? I remember to my colleague, I wasn't super nice. Every time I didn't feel like I was worth, she felt that as well. And in hindsight, it was super unfair, right? But I think a lot of people do that, really, right? So I always say, I think the main priority at first should be to be fine with yourself and to be kind with yourself, because people around you will notice that. And if you are tough with yourself, you're usually also tough with other people around you and have less empathy if you don't even have empathy for yourself, right? And now at the moment, I feel like, hey, I'm good. I'm in a good place mentally. I got through all of these things. I'm fine. I'm building again. And I can feel that I'm kinder to the people around me again as well. So I think it always starts with yourself, and then you will radiate that around you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I honestly think that how you treat yourself is also a reflection of how you treat others. And I think also I've noticed a lot with women particularly, they're given more often than not, right? And they give to others more than they give to themselves sometimes. And I've always have to keep this picture in mind of that water bottle with the glasses all around it. And if that water bottle is empty, I can't drink and neither can anyone around the table. But if I keep filling that water bottle, then there's water to go around for everyone. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with your analogy, right? Because at the end of the day, especially when you're a founder, when you're a solopreneur, when you're in sales in general, it takes a certain mental strength. And when you're not there, when you don't have it, it impacts everything else. And that also, in a way, impacts your value, your worth, the work that you're putting out there. And it's like you said before, there aren't always just rosy paths. There are ups and downs. And coming back to your post, right? And to a 55-year-old telling you oh, I wouldn't do that. If you were to stand in a room of 1,000 people and said to that room, who here has ever made a mistake? The majority of those people would put their hand up. If you said, who here has had a bad call? Again, the same. So why are we not okay to admit that vulnerability, and why do we set wrong expectations for other people, right? Of like, oh, everything's good, you're just going to be closing deals, making money, you're not going to be impacted by rejection ever, every call is going to be picked up. That's not sales, right? And so if we think that it's going to be that way and we put out there that it is that way, we're lying to ourselves and to others.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's usually just a fear of judgment, right? Like when I posted that post back in the day, I remember actually thinking, oh shit, I hope people don't think I'm just bad at sales calls all the time. And then that guy came up to me, right? And like he basically admitted to thinking exactly that, right? And to me, there was another lesson out of that experience that, you at some point you need to learn to be okay with what other people think about you, right? 100%. Like I needed to be confident and kind to myself within that space to say, hey, I know how good I am at this, right? Which is why I'm okay with admitting to my weaknesses as well, right? I think being able to say, hey, this just isn't my biggest strength and I'm working on that, is usually, and that's what I said to him back in the day also, like, I'm like, I would rather work with someone who is confident enough to say, hey, I'm really good at this, but that tiny part I need to work on, rather than someone that tells me, hey, I'm perfect in everything that I do, right? Because that's suspicious anyways, because it's not true. So I'd rather have you tell me up front what I'm dealing with than you painting me this perfect picture that I'm going to be suspicious of anyways, because I know no one's perfect and everyone has, stuff to work on. So there's a couple of lessons you can take out of that story, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually it is a strength to be able to admit defeat or to admit that something's not gone right, because it means you've got the self-awareness to realize that thing didn't go right in the first place and to do something about it to make it better for the next one. And, as a coach, I see this all the time when I speak to coachees and they tell me, everything's good. So if everything's good, why are you not on target? Why are your activities not met? Why are you showing up unhappy every day, right? Like, in order to figure out how to fix something, we need to get to the bottom of what's not going well first. And
absolutely.
A lot of people in the older generations just never got to that, and in a way had to protect themselves at work so that people didn't figure out what the things that didn't go right. And that in itself drove a lot of those toxic cultures, backstabbing, people looking out for themselves, not for others. And I honestly think that if we continued in that way, it just wouldn't be sustainable, especially now with AI coming into the picture.
100%. And I think it's a good time, right? Like I spoke to a candidate that is looking for an SDR role at the moment, right? And she has a little bit of experience, and she was, it was just before the interview started, and she called me and she was like, but Mattia, they're looking for someone that can do outbound sequencing really well. And I really only did calling sequences, right? I never really did LinkedIn and email. And she was like, yeah, so how do I tell them, and should I lie to them basically and say that I know this perfectly, or what do I say? And I was like, you know what? I think we're in the time that recruiters also and hiring managers appreciate it much more when you say, hey guys, just to be upfront, this is what I've done and this is what I'm good at. And I realize that you want someone that knows how to do outbound sequencing completely well. I'm not there yet, but here's how I'm going to get there. And these are the things that I'm planning, to learn, and like the action items that I'm going to do to help me get there, right? And they took her. It was yesterday. She got the offer this morning. And I was like, yeah, how great. And again, and sometimes I have this on LinkedIn when I log in and there's so much negativity and everyone's like, oh yeah, recruiters are shit and this is going shit and women empowerment is not where it's supposed to be, blah, 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 blah. sometimes it demotivates me a little bit because I'm like, yes, I know that. And I know that we need to make these kind of things visible. But the fact that someone got an offer when they said, hey, I'm not where I need to be yet, but this is how I'm going to get there. And they still get the job offer. That's, we've made progress here, right? I think 20 years ago, they would have never even be considered, or she would have felt so pressured to just lie and say that she's perfect in all of her skills to get the job, right? And then she'd be frustrated. And then the toxicity as you start is in full flywheel effect. So we've made progress, right? And I think it's good that we acknowledge this here and there.
I agree. And as I said before, in the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of changes, even down to, the cultures, even down to how many women are in sales, how many women leaders there are, that there really wasn't when I started, right? And, there has been a lot of things that have changed. I don't think sales is this cutthroat environment that it used to be or that it once was. And part of making that change is all of the people that are selling these days, that are making all of these vulnerabilities more visible, but also sharing their stories. And also the fact that we've got more access to information than we've ever had before, right? And people don't necessarily just stay in one company. They move from different companies, different roles. They're exposed to different things. And that in itself makes them realize, what do they like? What do they not like, right? And how do they move forward in a way that aligns with their values? Because I think that actually our generations care a lot more about their own values than just the company values, and is, okay, do my values align with this company, and how do I make this work so that I show up and I'm happy to come to work? Because it is proven that happier employees perform better, right? Is that something you've noticed as well?
Absolutely. And I think that's probably also due to the shift in the market, right? Like back in the day, you were like, there was only a few companies and not as many good jobs. Now talents are like, hey, I have probably 25 recruiter messages in my inbox. I'm going to think twice about whether for the next years I want to bind myself to a toxic workplace or to a happy workplace. The only little thing that I see there that I still think is problematic is that recruitment in that sense is also sales, right? And at the end of the day, for example, I know a company here in Berlin with a very big SDR team. I know 90% of the SDRs have mental problems because it's a really, really, really tough work environment. The leaders are, it's just horror stories that I hear from that, right? But then when I look at how they do their interviews and what they tell their talents, I'm like, guys, you're selling a dream here when really it's a nightmare working for you, right? And who do you blame? I mean, the recruiter also has to do their job, right? And they also have their targets. What are they supposed to tell? Like, hey, all of our SDRs are in therapy right now because we're not being kind to them. So it's a little bit of a problem that I don't really know an answer to yet, and how to fix that. But a lot of the things, and I hope I don't get shit for saying this, but I see sales cultures like that, where there's no empathy, where there's no kindness, usually when the leader is around the age of the friend of my dad who said, hey, don't do things like that, right? Because they've kind of grown up within that sales culture and within that sales environment, and now that's all they've known, and that's how they lead their leader as of today, right? Which is kind of shit for the now. But then when you think to be true what you said earlier on, where SDRs and AEs are the leaders of today, at least there's of tomorrow, at least there's hope that will change as soon as that entire generation is not within the workplace anymore, right? But I think that's one of the big reasons that some sales teams are still suffering from these things, right? Because there's people in place that, have had a career in a very different work environment where there was no kindness or no empathy.
Yeah, I fully agree, right? And I think as part of this conversation, we can't change the whole world. We can't change every company. We can't change every leader. But if we can inspire someone to be a little bit kinder, to look around their team, to look at it from an empathetic perspective or a compassionate perspective rather than just results. Because when you look at your team, you care for your team, they will deliver those results as well, right? And obviously, as I said, we can't change everyone in one go, but there are changes, and hopefully people will realize the value of kindness in the workplace and actually how it can not just impact the culture, but it can impact the results and it can impact the day-to-day of your individuals, right? And I guess to end this kind of kindness in sales area, I would like to ask you as well, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone trying to lead their business with more heart and humanity? Because I do find that sometimes people don't even realize they're not doing it because of the way they were managed in the past, etc., right?
Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, right, then I would subscribe a little bit more self-awareness if people don't even notice. But I mean, at the end of the day, everything that you can do is check in with your people, ask them how they feel, give them the room to tell you how they actually feel. And that, is in combination with self-awareness and being like, hey, I'm just questioning or like I'm reflecting on my leadership style. I want to give us, 20-30 minutes of an open conversation about what I can do better, so that you feel like, there's more heart and there's more kindness within this business. And I did the same thing with one of the people that I'm working with a couple of months ago. It was towards the end of last year. And she said something that I was like, oh, wow, I didn't notice I do that, and I would have never noticed. She would have never told me probably if I didn't ask her. So being upfront about it and asking for that kind of feedback and really giving people the room, because if you just do it and you say, yeah, can you tell me what I can do better and where I can be more kind, you're probably not going to get the answer, right? Because people don't take it serious, right? So you really need to set the stage and be like, hey, I'm serious about this. This is a safe space. You can tell me what it is that you need to have changed. And then, not because then that happens sometimes, right? And I remember I did the same thing. When she said that to me, I was kind of defensive. I was like, what? No, I don't do this, But I slept a night over it and I'm like, yeah, shit, I do this. And it was a good lesson for me also, right? Because I was like, why do I do this? I do this because, this and that happened. I don't want to go too deep into it now because but yeah, being self-aware and thinking about why you do the things that you do, probably.
I think with what you've said as well, it comes to show that feedback really goes both ways. And it's not just about giving feedback down,
Absolutely.
But feedback up also drives changes, right? And I think it's super important. And I quite like whenever I finish a training session for like a period of weeks, or I finish coaching after a few months, I will always ask the question of stop, start, continue, right? What is one thing that I need to start doing that I'm not doing? What is one thing that I need to continue doing from what I've done so far? And what is one thing that I need to stop? Right. And oftentimes getting different perspectives from different reps gives you a very good insight as to what's more beneficial to them and what isn't, because what you think may be beneficial may not actually be.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree.
So we're going to move on to the sales development and AI part. I know that we're more or less on time. Are you okay to go on for 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll ask you 2 questions around the sales and development, and then we'll go on to the round fire. You've been in sales for a while now. You've started as an SDR to now being a founder. So how has the role of sales development evolved in the last few years, and what are some changes that you see coming?
I think it's probably a pretty classic answer, but I remember when I started as an SDR, it was all about quantity and mass automations, and you get, sales is a numbers game, and if you message 200 people a day, then you're going to get the results. That was kind of the motto when I started in sales. We were just, I think, at the breakup point or at the break point where it was starting to get better. And nowadays, So it was starting it where we were doing more personalization. I felt like now AI happened, right? And people are like, wow, nice. So we can send thousands of messages again, right? Because now we have our AI employees that can send them out and things like that. So I think for a bit now, it's been about quantity again. And I think throughout the next months, we're going to see that change again, where we will change from AI quantity to AI quality within the SDR space. I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think it's exciting, to be fair. I think it's exciting for the good SDRs, and it's probably daunting for the SDRs that are kind of average, because the average SDRs, I do think so, are going to be gone within the next 2 years. I think we're going to see a drastic change within the landscape.
You're the second person to mention that today. I think AI can be a very good friend to good SDRs to enhance their productivity, their effectiveness, to streamline, to save time. But as you say, to lazy SDRs, to non-productive SDRs, to SDRs that are looking to shift the problem and the blame and only using AI to gain advantages, they probably won't get as far as the top performers that are using it strategically, right? Because at the end of the day, AI is a source of information, but it's also how you use that source of information, right? And I think being smart on top of it will drive that difference, but also being human, being kind, building that trust are also going to be key roles into building relationships.
I was going to say, I think it doesn't actually, in my opinion, doesn't have much to do with smartness. It has more to do, I mean, smartness needs to be a given, kind of, right? It has more to do with what you said, passion, being able to build relationships, and that the best way to do that is with kindness, right? Very few relationships are built with non-kindness or being mean, right? That just doesn't usually happen. So I think the people that love being in sales, the people that are super passionate about it, they're going to be like, oh, nice. I can automate and I can help myself with all the tasks that I usually don't want to do, and I can fully focus on relationship building with other humans or with other people within sales. And those are going to be the SDRs or the salespeople in general that are going to survive. Yeah.
Agree. And you mentioned something there. So I guess my question to you is, do you think AI can be trained to sell with kindness?
I mean, I think you can set better boundaries, right? You can probably have an AI, like if you have a mean human that is doing sales and that just can't connect and that doesn't know how to be kind, an AI is probably better than that, right? Because you can have a baseline of kindness. You can prompt it in a way that's just always nice and never not nice, right? So I think in that way, yes. In the other way, I don't think yet, but then also it's been difficult because things are moving so fast. So it's difficult to say, oh, that's never going to happen. I feel like we are always going to bond with human kindness much more than with AI kindness in that sense.
I agree. And I think, as I said, AI is super useful. It would be a shame not to use it, and you'll be left behind if you're not using it. But it's not a person, it's not a human, and it doesn't have the ability to think. It has the ability to gather, right?
I mean, we say that now, right? And yet there are stories about people that fall in love with an AI bot because the AI bot is kind to them, and probably not many other people are kind to them and listen to them and reinforce them, right? So I think for people like us, we say like, hey, yeah, we can't bond with an AI, but I mean, there is people that do prefer an AI bot over actual human interaction by now, right? So I don't know what the future can hold around that.
Very true. We will see. It's moving so fast that I think what we see today is going to be so different than a year's time, 2 years' time, even 6 months. But talking of fast, we'll end the podcast today with a quick round fire. So I've got 3 quick questions. First answer that comes to your mind, you can say it. So the first one is kindest boss or co-worker you've ever had. What made them stand out, or would you like to give them a shout out?
I have to say Ollie Sharp for that one. VP EMEA Sales Loft at the time. And I can't tell you in a short answer what it was about, or what made him stand out, but he was just so kind. If I think about a kind sales leader, I think of Ollie Sharp straight away.
That's good to hear, and I'll probably be reaching out for him to come on board and have a conversation.
Yes, he should. Well. He's a perfect guest for this podcast, 100%.
Perfect. So what is one book, podcast, or resource that's helped you lead with more kindness?
To Sell is Human, probably, from David Pink Floyd.
Very good book. Last question. If your leadership style had a theme song, what would it be?
Hui. I'm thinking of a German song right now that probably no one's gonna know. Band by Seed, and probably all of their songs would be my cover songs. But I have to say I'm not super musical, so that question is difficult for me to answer.
That's fine. We can change it to what is one small act of kindness that's made a big impact on you at work?
Positive affirmations, I think. It's something I sadly only do when I don't feel good, because when I do feel good and when I'm kind to myself, I always forget it. It's a bit stupid, actually. I should do it all the time, but especially in times where I don't feel good, I really try to go on a morning walk and talk to myself how I got this and how I can do this. Especially when I notice that when I'm not paying attention, I'm really mean to myself in my head. I do this a lot when I'm when I'm on my bike, actually, also. Sometimes you would see me riding through Berlin and I'm talking aloud to myself, and you would probably think like, damn, what's going on with that woman? She might be a bit insane. But I think that's something that you can do and that is very underrated, to talk to yourself and hype yourself up, and don't just do it in your head, but actually make a sound while you do it. I think that's something that I've always underestimated, and I always thought, don't worry about that. That can't be true. But I found it to be very helpful.
If it's something that you're doing more when you need it, but less when you don't need it, it might be time to implement it as part of a weekly or monthly ritual, just so that you've got it ongoing.
Absolutely.
Because we can't wait until we're down to get ourselves back up sometimes, right?
100%. 100%. It's a good reminder, actually, this podcast. To myself.
The last 2 questions I'm going to ask you, Mattia, are which 2 people I should speak to next?
So I think one we've already discovered, Ollie Sharp. I think you should definitely speak to him. And then I would also nominate my friend Mafalda Johansson. She is a great person, and I think she's also very kind as an SDR leader to her team.
I will be reaching out to both of them. So our previous guest, Yuri, left a question for you. And that question is, what's your game plan in the age of things that we're in, where things are moving really fast, to stay true to your values while staying ahead of the game? I
think that's a good reminder to make a game plan for that, actually. But I think I think usually what I do, right now my motto is AI first, and I really try to think with everything that I'm doing, all the processes within my company, how can I make my life easier with AI? And I think if you do that, you just need to focus on combining that with your values, right? Like if your value is, hey, I want to be kind to everything and to everyone and make them feel seen, then you can implement that within your strategy, right? I don't think it's an either or thing. I think you can definitely combine that. You just need to be very, and here we are again, self-aware of the things that you do and the impact that it has, right? So yeah.
Thank you. And what would be your question for our next guest?
Do I have to say that right now, or do I have time to think about it?
You can message me and then
All right.
I can
I'll message
ask
you.
the next list. But thank you so much, Mattia. This has been a really insightful and a really lovely conversation. The time has flown by. Thank you to everyone for listening or watching as well. I will see you again next week with another episode, but I hope that you have a lovely day.
It was awesome. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.